It's October 30th here in Seoul. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Hwang Ji-hye filling in for Laah Hyun-kyung. And these are the stories we're following at this hour. Korea's business sentiment among manufacturers this month dips to the lowest level this year despite government efforts to prop up the ailing economy. It's over. The U.S. Federal Reserve ends its bond buying program that had been supporting growth since the global financial crisis of 2008. And the leaders of Korea's rival political parties differ over how to revitalize the domestic economy in policy speeches. We start with worsening business sentiment here in Korea in the face of the sluggish global economy. Real economic figures are reflecting the pessimism which comes despite government efforts to boost growth. Kim Ji-yeon tells more.
Business sentiment in Korea's manufacturing sector has dropped to the year's low this month, despite government efforts to boost economic growth. An official from the Bank of Korea attributes the decline to economic uncertainties, largely stemming from China and the Eurozone and the fluctuation of the Korean currency. The low business sentiment is being reflected in the real economy as well. Industrial output recorded negative growth for the second straight month, declining nearly 1% in September from the previous month. And companies are not expecting the situation to improve anytime soon. In a survey of 125 chief executive officers in Korea, more than 90% of respondents said they expected the business climate next year to be similar or worse compared to this year. Less than 9% of the respondents said the Korean economy would be better next year. A lack of new growth engines was cited as the biggest concern, and a majority of those surveys said they plan to focus more on improving their financial stability than on expanding their business. The government says its utmost priority is revitalizing the Korean economy. President Park Geun-hye, in her parliamentary address on Wednesday, said that the government would increase its budget by $19 billion next year to spur growth. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And encouraging foreigners to do business in Korea is also at the heart of President Park Geun-hye's push to boost growth. So the government has designated this week as Foreign Investment Week, opening Korea's doors to investors from around the world. Hwang Ji-hye has more.
If you're interested in investing in Korea, this week may be a good time to start, as Korea's Trade Ministry is holding its annual Foreign Investment Week. Over 300 foreign investors from 22 countries are visiting the country for this occasion, including the investment chiefs of global companies like Boeing and General Electric. Nearly $60 million worth of contracts were signed on the first day of this year's Foreign Investment Week alone, with an American company acquiring $50 million of commercial real estate property and a Spanish corporation agreeing to invest $7 million into construction of a marina city on Korea's Jeju Island. Organizers are also holding sessions for foreign investors and introducing business opportunities to them that center on Korean cultural contents. They're also pinpointing prospective sectors that could benefit upon implementation of a Korea-China FTA. Later this evening, Seoul's Trade Ministry will be hosting its annual Foreign Companies Day at COEX. At this year's event, Corning will be receiving the most prestigious Gold Tower Order of Industrial Service Merit for investing an accumulated $2.5 billion and creating jobs for over 3,000 employees, while at the same time helping Korea earn its reputation as the world's leading display maker. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And this next development is causing concerns among Korea's economic policymakers of massive capital outflow. The U.S. Fed has completely ended its 6-year-long monthly bond buying program, but decided to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable period of time. Kim Min-ji has more.
It's official. The Federal Reserve has called time on the quantitative easing stimulus program it started in 2008 during the global financial crisis. The widely expected decision came at the end of a two-day meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee in Washington. In a statement released Wednesday, the Fed said there has been a substantial improvement in the outlook for the labor market and the broader economy has grown stronger. The Fed also expressed confidence the gradual economic recovery in the U.S. will continue despite a global economic slowdown. With the focus on achieving maximum employment, the U.S. Central Bank said it will maintain the 0 to 0.25% target range for interest rates for what it called a considerable time. It added that a rate hike could take place if the committee sees progress towards its employment and inflation objectives. However, experts point out that uncertainties will linger because of the vagueness in the term used by the Fed.
Perhaps until the December meeting, we are going to see this enhanced volatility because now there's going to be speculation about what are they going to change the considerable time language to. Once they give us a little bit more guidance and specificity with that, it could actually tamp down some of the market volatility because there will be less guesswork involved.
At its highest point, the central bank was pumping $85 billion a month into the financial system. It started cutting back on the program in increments last year as the economy steadily picked up. Since the program's introduction, the Fed has made more than $4 trillion in bond purchases. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Back to Korea's economic front, Samsung Electronics confirmed its third quarter profit was the lowest in more than 3 years because of slowing sales of its smartphones. The Korean tech giant reported Thursday that its profits in the July to September period totaled $4.4 billion, down a whopping 60% from a year earlier. That's in line with its guidance released earlier this month. Korea's LG Electronics, however, posted a record sales in its mobile division. LG says its quarterly smartphone shipments jumped nearly 40% from a year earlier, hitting nearly 17 million units, driven largely by strong sales of its flagship G3 smartphone. And it wasn't just LG that did well in the third quarter. Naver, the country's largest portal operator, is enjoying solid growth momentum thanks to the successful global launch of its mobile messenger Line. Naver said Thursday that it posted an operating profit of $180 million in the third quarter this year, up almost 90% from a year earlier. Overall sales during this period rose 22%, while net profits jumped a staggering 92%. Thanks to Line's robust growth, Naver's overseas revenue expanded over 50% on-year to reach around $220 million, accounting for 1/3 of Naver's total sales. And thanks to the growing number of Chinese visitors to the country, Korea posted a tourism account surplus for the first time in 28 months. Data compiled by the Central Bank and the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute shows foreign tourists spent a total of $1.7 billion last month, up 35% compared to a year earlier. Chinese tourists accounted for almost half of all foreign visitors to the country. Korea is charting a path to the widespread use of digital documentation, which means a more paperless society, not only in meeting rooms and conferences, but also in our daily lives. This is just one of the goals being pursued at the ongoing International Telecommunication Union meeting down in Busan. Shin Se-min has this report.
Everything is going digital these days. From paying taxes to filing out resident registration documents, the use of electronic documentation has made tasks like these much more convenient. Korea is already a leader in the government digital documentation field. But some sectors are still reliant on paper, and experts say it may be a while before the use of electronic documentation is as widespread.
It is a cultural task, and it won't be easy trying to bring everyone on board. But considering the era that we live in, digitalizing documents is something that needs to be done, and soon. There will be no more paperwork if it all goes digital.
But there's still a number of obstacles. Only 43% of institutions and businesses in Korea use electronic documentations, lower than the government's aim of 50% by 2015. And experts attribute the gap to a lack of understanding and awareness among everyday users. A group of experts gathered on the sidelines of the quadrennial ITU conference on Wednesday to discuss the possible directions for Korea in fully implementing these services on the domestic front and making inroads to the global market.
Fostering growth among private enterprises is the key to helping the sector expand. If the government puts more effort into sponsoring these services in the finance and medical sectors, where electronic documents are widely used, there will be no concerns about reaching the everyday user.
The National IT Industry Promotion Agency has already gotten a head start, and officials there say digital documentation services will soon be a reality in the IT sector. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News, Busan.
The leaders of Korea's rival parties have delivered their respective policy speeches on how to revive Korea's slow economic recovery. And it shouldn't come as a great surprise that they have very different ideas about how to tackle the issues at hand. Chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party Kim Moo-sung called for deregulation, promoting the service industry as a means to create new jobs and finding new growth engines. The interim leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, Moon Hee-sang, had other ideas, saying the focus should be on consumer-driven growth, not on giving tax breaks to conglomerates and hiking taxes on tobacco and auto products. And moving on to the North Korean issue, Pyongyang and Tokyo have completed talks on the North's investigation into Japanese nationals abducted by the North in the 1970s and 80s. Speaking to reporters after meeting North Korean officials in Pyongyang, Junichi Hara, Tokyo's top diplomat for Asian affairs, said his delegation stressed that the abduction issue should be given the highest priority. He also urged Pyongyang to speed up the process. North Korea said the investigation was underway in burial grounds of Japanese citizens. Pyongyang stressed it will inform Japan of any developments. The talks held in Pyongyang were the first of their kind in a decade. And now finally, some positive news over the Ebola outbreak. World Health officials say the outbreak in Liberia appears to be on a decline. But the WHO cautions about too much optimism, saying the battle at large is far from over. Connie Kim reports.
There's a glimmer of hope in the fight against Ebola in Liberia, the country hit hardest by this latest outbreak. The World Health Organization says it has solid evidence that shows the rate of new cases has been dropping for more than a week.
The actual number of newly reported cases is beginning to decline in Liberia. Most of you somewhat aware of this. It appears that the trend is real in Liberia.
The WHO officials said there are now scores of empty beds in clinics and the number of burials is on the decline. He cited a major public awareness campaign and safer burial procedures as major factors behind the falling numbers. However, the Global Health Organization stressed this deadly epidemic is far from over and more financial support is necessary. The WHO initially said it needed $260 million to bring the epidemic under control, but only half of that figure has been met. Despite the optimism in Liberia, Ebola cases in neighboring Sierra Leone and Guinea are showing no signs of improvement. On top of that, Mali confirmed its first Ebola case just last week. The WHO says there have been about 3,000 new reported cases of Ebola since last weekend, bringing the total to more than 13,000. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Search efforts are intensifying at a tea plantation in central Sri Lanka after heavy monsoon rains unleashed destructive landslides there. The country's disaster management minister said more than 100 people are believed to be under the mud and debris, while other officials put the figure at upwards of 500. Local reports say an area of about 2 kilometers was affected by the landslide, crushing some 140 houses buried under 9 meters of mud. They also said many children have been orphaned as their parents were believed to have been home when the mudslides struck. Search efforts had been hampered by bad weather, raising the possibility of even more landslides. An apple a day may keep the doctor away, and the same phrase could be applied to a glass of milk, but not if you drink too much. A group of Swedish researchers say downing too much milk could double the chance of dying early. Researchers at Uppsala University conducted a 20-year study on 100,000 people's dietary habits. The results showed that those who drank 3 or more cups of milk a day died earlier than those who drank less. Also, according to the study, milk did not help in preventing bone fractures. But the researchers say they did not consider other factors such as alcohol consumption, smoking, and weight, adding they don't want to discourage people from drinking a moderate amount of milk every day. Now, a video showing a woman walking the streets of New York City has gone viral. Now, that might sound innocuous enough, but the lady in question was subjected to scores of catcalls by men on the street over the course of the day. The video, which can be found on YouTube, is part of a social media campaign calling for an end to this kind of harassment. Connie Lee reports.
Hey, girl, how you doing? Hey, beautiful.
This is a hidden camera video shot all around New York City. It shows 24-year-old Shoshana Roberts, an aspiring actress wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, walking around the city and receiving all kinds of comments from random men on the street.
Wow.
At one point, a man even follows her for up to 5 minutes. In just over 10 hours, Shoshana had to endure more than 100 unsolicited comments. The video is a public service announcement made in partnership with nonprofit firm Hollaback, which hopes to combat the issue.
Street harassment is sexual harassment that happens in public space. So we're talking about groping, stalking, public masturbation, verbal comments that happen on the street, even gestures.
Since it was uploaded on YouTube on Tuesday, the video has been watched over 10 billion times and received over 50,000 comments. Organizers say they want to reveal the extent of street harassment against women and to show that it should not be tolerated. Hollaback estimates that up to 90% of women experience some sort of street harassment at some point in their lives. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
It's looking increasingly likely that nongak, a type of traditional Korean farmers' music, will be added to UNESCO's World Heritage List next month. The panel responsible for adding new cultural items has recommended the Korean community band music and dance and rituals be inscripted. 6 North Korean variations of the traditional folk song ARIRANG were also recommended. This would mark a first for North Korea to make it on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List. South Korea's version of ARIRANG was added 2 years ago. A final decision will be made at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris in November. Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during wartime has been an issue for years as Tokyo refuses to fully acknowledge its role in the atrocities that were carried out. Along the way, many individuals have taken up the issue as a source of artistic inspiration. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us with the newest edition. Welcome, Yoon-hee.
Thank you for having me. So some artists have created paintings, statues and such, some of which I brought into the studio. And all of these are to bring awareness to this issue. Now, amongst those tributes are also movies. And the most recently released movie has a very sad story about one of those victims. So take a look.
Kim spent most of her life in China. Now she's an old woman.
but she's hiding a dark secret in her past. A secret about how she was taken from her home in Korea and ended up in a foreign country all by herself. Kyu-im was a sex slave taken by Japanese soldiers during the war, and she flashes back to her treacherous journey in the movie Tuning Fork.
The issue of the sex slave grandmas is something everyone should know about, so this movie was created upon profound meaning.
Kyu-im is played by actress Eo-ki, and her younger counterpart played by Iyul. And though it's been decades since the end of the war, Kyu-im is still stuck in China. She's desperate to get back to Korea, and the pain of her past is driving both her and her granddaughter, played by actress Cho-an, to the limits.
In order to prevent such a tragic aspect of Korea's history from repeating itself, I thought about how I have to portray this so people will never forget.
The sexual slavery of Korean women by Japanese soldiers during the war has been a prominent issue in society, appearing on books, on the silver screen, and all over the internet. Even short animated movies like Her Story, which tells of one grandmother's encounter with sexual slavery, brings the issue to awareness. It's movies like these and Tuning Fork that shed light on a dark past in hopes of healing the former victims and also to make sure it never happens again.
And that last piece of animation, I think, are all ages allowed to watch that? Or is it just children?
It's available on YouTube, so you can, but I mean, I must warn you, there are some graphic visuals there as well. But the whole short film is only about 11 minutes long, so very short. But it's very important that this kind of issue is brought into awareness as well, that it's really shown and not hidden under, I guess, the rug, you can say. And so amongst those, there are also cartoon exhibitions as well. And so actually, in fact, they're showing The Flower That Doesn't Wilt, which is a very big exhibition that they showed around the country, and it's going to be showing until the 11th of November at the Yeongju Culture and Art Center.
And that exhibition is taking place in different cities, I guess?
Exactly. So it has made its way around. It even made it all the way over to the Angoulême, France Cartoon International Comics Festival recently. And so right now it is being shown here in Korea again. And so it features 14 different artists who have created various different comic series influenced or inspired by this issue of sexual slavery of the Korean women. And so it is, I've been to the exhibition, and it is beautiful to look at because it is beautiful art done by some amazing artists, but at the same time it is a very heavy, I guess, topic, you can kind of say, but it is really something that people should look at. I saw many families go together, so I think it's something that people should really take a look at.
Yeah, and I should also take a look at it.
I highly recommend it for this weekend.
Thank you for the report, Uni.
You're very welcome.
We're having a typical fall weather here in Korea. Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The current temperature is at 14 degrees here in Seoul, which is about 2 degrees higher than we recorded at the same time yesterday. And the daytime high is expected to rise above 20 here in the capital today. Now, however, the wide temperature fluctuation is the thing to keep in mind these days, so make sure to have an extra cardigan or a jacket because we are expecting more than a 10-degree drop in the evening hours. And looking at the skies, we have partly cloudy skies, and with that, rain is expected tonight over in both Jeollado provinces and on Jeju Island, which will then expand nationwide tomorrow, lasting until Sunday. And to our readings for today, Seoul will peak at 21 this afternoon. The southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top out at 20 and 21 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island peaks at 21, Dokdo at 17, while Kumgang will be a bit higher at 19 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that wraps up our newscast. I'll be back at 4 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.